Guys, and welcome to Diabetic 365, and today we have a very special guest from London. She is Alan, and she has been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when she is 23 years old, and she has been living with this from past 7 years. And she is also the director and founder of one of the charities in UK that's called Diabetes with Eating Disorders. So welcome to the show, Alan.
Hi.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, thank you.
So, before going into your the charity or your foundation, let's get started with your type 1 diabetes. So,
Yeah.
when were you first diagnosed, and how were you diagnosed, and what was your first reaction at that time? Can you share the experiences if you remember well?
Yeah, it's quite funny actually because I knew I had diabetes. Just had all the symptoms, and I worked in a pharmacist when I was younger, so when I started losing weight and I was peeing all the time and I was really tired, and suddenly I just wanted McDonald's for breakfast, lunch and dinner, and I woke up one morning and I couldn't see, and I knew at that point it was diabetes. So I took myself off to my GP and said to him, I think I have diabetes, to which I was told I was too old for type 1, too young for type 2, and sent back out the door without as much as a blood test. And a week later I ended up in the back of an ambulance on the way to hospital, and yeah, I was extremely lucky to survive that actually, because it went undiagnosed for far too long. So yeah, that was exciting and fun. That's when I was diagnosed, yeah.
So, after getting diagnosed, what are the kind of changes, lifestyle changes that you took to cope with the disease?
I think actually, for me, I mean at that point, I've always been fairly into nutrition and dietetics and stuff like that, so I really wasn't worried, stupidly. When I first got diagnosed, I just thought, well, you know, all I need to do is take injections. You know, my diet's good, I exercise, so I wasn't really worried about it. It wasn't until later on that the sort of psychological effects, and, you know, I realised by accident that by not taking my insulin I could lose weight. That's when I started to have a problem. But when I was first diagnosed, I mean, I didn't cry or anything like that. I remember just thinking, well, you know, all I have to do is take injections, and so that's a lot easier than, say, someone who has cancer or heart disease. But I was very naive.
And and also when we discussed earlier that you said you have all the complications, neuropathy or retinopathy or whatever complications. So when did you start seeing these complications, year after or 2 years, or how are they, and which stage are they now?
Well, actually it was about 6 months into not taking my insulin. So about a year after I was diagnosed, I started developing neuropathy and retinopathy and stomach problems, and obviously that got much worse during the time that I wasn't taking my insulin, which was about 2-3 years. And at one point I had severe retinopathy, and I had gastroparesis as well, which means that, you know, the nerves on my stomach were dead. So I you know, coming out of eating disorder recovery and then not being able to eat is pretty difficult. But now I've reversed them all. So actually now my complications are negligible. If I have a random high blood sugar now, they'll flare up, but as far as affecting everyday life, well, you know, I run the charity, I work part-time, and I'm a student, so they don't affect me in a day-to-day way. Whereas before, I was told that, you know, if I kept on going, I would end up blind and without limbs and that sort of stuff. So I have managed to reverse it, which I'm incredibly grateful for.
That's very good. So you mentioned that you weren't on insulin for quite a while. So what was the reason for that?
Well, I should have been on insulin, but I didn't take it because I deliberately put myself in a state of diabetic ketoacidosis so that I could lose large amounts of weight. That's why I did it. In the same way that before I was diabetic, I'd thrown up or I'd starved myself. Now I had a new mechanism that was much more fast, but also much more deadly.
Yeah, but because that is very, yeah, as you said, deadly and also frightening. So, many people also try this kind of stuff to lose weight, but which isn't very good. So, what is the advice from your side, or your experiences from your side, to the people who are trying to do that?
Don't do it.
Don't do that.
Start. Don't start. If you're at the stage now where maybe you've missed a couple of injections, or, classically it'll be, well, I'll get to this weight and then I'll stop, or anything like that. Don't do it, because it's pointless. Number one, what you're losing is fluid. It's not fat. What you're losing is fluid and muscle tissue and tissue from your organs. So that's a really important thing to remember. That for every part of weight that you lose, you're also losing part of your faculties. Don't get into it. That's that would be my honest advice. Just don't. And if you are in it, then you have something that is as valid as anorexia or bulimia. It is, and it affects 40% of young women globally with type 1 diabetes. So you're not alone. Reach out, get help, talk about it, and don't be ashamed, because there are plenty of us out there, and we all want to help you.
Exactly. So you found this charity called Diabetes with Eating Disorders, and you also said that you first had some group on the Facebook, bulimia. So can you explain that, how it got started and all that stuff?
Well, actually, I started a website when I started getting better, and it was in the sort of far-flung corner of the internet. And through that, I met a girl called Erin, and Erin set up the Facebook group, which is Diabulimia Awareness, and she now runs our sister charity, which is Diabulimia Helpline, and she operates in the US and Canada. So it's quite funny little support group. There was about 30 of us, but now on all the various social media formats across the world, there's over 800 of us. So, I mean, the growth has been exponential, and we still get new members every day. And it's great. It's great that we've got something global now as well. And, it's a very supportive community. It's completely pro-recovery. We don't allow the postings of numbers or pictures or anything that's not helpful to someone trying to get better. And we're not judgmental at all. I mean, a lot of us have other health issues as well, a lot of mental health issues and a lot of physical issues. And the great thing about being on the board is that it's so open. Like if someone accidentally wets themselves because they're in DKA, we can have a good laugh about it and not judge that person. Whereas it's a horrific thing to go through. To admit that you'd rather wet yourself than take your insulin.
Exactly.
And unless you've been there, you can't possibly understand, or we don't even ask people to explain. We just say come along, and because we've all done it. That's the other thing. Somebody will say something like that, and then within 2 minutes you'll have 30 other people going, "Don't worry, I used to be exactly the same, and now I'm better." So it's a really important part of what we do.
So, and also you said that there is a large amount of disconnect between the doctors who help in the nutrition side and also the endocrinologists who are helping, to take better insulin and make yourself better. So what is that disconnect that you found?
Quite simply that diabetes specialists don't understand eating disorders, and eating disorder specialists don't understand diabetes. So what you've got there is, for example, you might have someone like myself. I was misdiagnosed with anorexia because my weight was really low. So they're saying to me, "Oh, you don't have to worry about what you eat. That's the therapy, is to get into a state where you don't worry about what you eat." But as a diabetic, that's never possible. So they're, on one hand, they're saying, "Oh, don't worry about the carbs," but then your diabetic consultant's going, "Oh, well, this is far too many carbs," or the disconnect comes from a mutual ignorance of the other speciality. So that a lot of what we do is training. So we'll go out to hospitals, we'll always, conferences, that sort of stuff. basically just try and get as many people from both sides in a room as possible and make them talk. So yeah, that is an important part of what we do, but that is definitely where the disconnect is. And the problem with the disconnect there is that it can be dangerous. I mean, we had someone that was in an inpatient unit recently that wasn't allowed to know the sugar content of her food. So she had no idea what to inject for. And all the time the eating disorder specialists are insisting that this is good for her. She was drinking Coke, eating chocolate, and it took us getting her diabetic consultant to step in and write a letter for that to stop. But in the meantime, I mean, that could have killed her. Nobody was watching her inject. They were watching what she ate, but they weren't watching what she injected. So the problem is that the disconnect is potentially life-threatening.
Okay. So, I mean, by using your charity, so what is the goal in the next 5 years? What are you going to do? How are you going to connect with the patients, and how are you going to connect with the doctors and bring them on one platform?
Ooh, that's a big question. Well, what we've already started to see since we started working is within the NHS we're building referral pathways. So what we're doing is we're going into a specific community and getting the professionals there to talk to each other, so that when we get someone else from that community that comes to us and says, I need help, there's direct already there. So we're already sort of doing that. And also, what we really want is our own inpatient ward somewhere that's only for type 1 diabetics who don't take their insulin, because obviously sometimes you get put in with, 5-stone anorexics, and that's just not helpful for a diabetic who, the initial water weight gain when you try and get better from this is really quite astounding. So, but we've already started to see certain hospitals in the UK are giving us beds. So they'll say, okay, well, we'll now that we've spoken to you, we will save 2 or 3 beds for your demographic, and that's amazing because there was absolutely nothing in place before.
That's really good, and if that happens in the US too, it's great. From your friend, the one you're working with, and if they can do this in the US too, it's really great. So she's doing a doctor education program at the moment. So she's taking out a specific tailored program to doctors all across the US just now. So it's good. It's a global effort. Exactly. So now stepping back to, what are some of the things that you learned hard way as a type 1 diabetic in this past 7 years that you want to advise people?
That there's absolutely no point in trying to be perfect. I mean, one of the things that I used to get so frustrated about is that sometimes there just is no rhyme or reason to why your blood sugar is a certain way. And actually, it's the intention behind that blood sugar that matters. I mean, because I used to deliberately want to see a high reading, whereas now when I see a high reading, it's incredibly frustrating. I don't know what I've done, and I think probably not to crucify myself for that has been the biggest lesson over the last 7 years, and just to make sure that, I know that I'm doing my best and that I'm making the right choices. Sometimes things go wrong. That's just the nature of diabetes. It's not because I'm a bad human being. It's
not your fault.
Yeah.
So the other thing is your final, word to the type 1 or diabetes people out there.
If you need help, ask for it. You can come to me directly if you want to. My email address is jack@dweds.org.uk. And it is possible to get better from this. No matter how bad you think you are, you can still recover.
Exactly. Thank you, Allan, for filling type 1 diabetics with much hope in UK and also US, and sending out your message to this video. And I wish you a very happy and healthy life, and you take care. Thank you.
Yeah, you too. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.